Well, hello dear viewer, and welcome to the west wing of our property. Now I know I've got a few viewers across the pond, so you might be a bit sort of confused by me saying west wing, and it isn't really the seat of power in this house because that would be the kitchen, which is at the east end. But we're out here today on the balcony because over there, I hope you can see the hills of Hoy, and between us on our island of Orkney, which is called South Ronaldsay, and Hoy is Scapa Flow. Now, Scapa Flow is famous the world over as an inland sea, and it was the base of the British Navy during both World Wars, yes. And the reason for being out at this end of the house today, and it is jolly cold if I'm honest, is that I want to talk to you today about Scapa Whisky. And the Scapa distillery is right at the, now is it the north or the east end of Scapa Flow? I guess it's the north end. And it's by the biggest beach in the flow. And it's quite a recent distillery, but interestingly, for most Orcadians, maybe Scapa is their favourite whisky. And I know my friends at Highland Park are going to be, they're going to be cross that I said that. But lots of Orcadians love this whisky. So, Scapa. It's owned by Pernod Ricard. And for some reason, because my interest is very, very much about how whisky goes with food, I do find that their whiskies really, they meld with food so well and bring extra flavours to it. And this whisky, this is probably the third or fourth bottle I've bought. Okay, it's not always in my barrel, apart from when my barrel being my whisky cabinet, apart from when friends are coming, but I really do like it, and it should be in there far more often. It's very, very different from many other island whiskies. Now I'm cuddling it quite a lot because it is cold. I'm filming this at the very beginning of March, and whilst that might bring on a hint of the tropics in the south of England where we moved from, up here if we get to sort of 6 or 7 degrees Celsius, that's really quite a good day. So very, very fruity nose, very different from other island whiskies, as I say. I suppose maybe the nearest I get to that would be sort of entry-level Juras on the nose, but there's certainly no hint of peatiness whatsoever. It's just quite light and very, very enticing. So those of you who know Scapa will probably be thinking, yeah, I must ping her a note and say how much I miss the 15-year-old. You are not alone, dear viewer. I should think 70% of the whisky world misses the Scapa 15-year-old, which was delicious. And hopefully one day they'll have enough whisky back in stock to make it again. Who knows? So there's not a lot of romance with the Scapa distillery. The still room always reminds me of a sort of a 1930s power plant, you know, a electricity station or sort of water pumping station or something like that. But it is really interesting with just early 20th century fantastic working equipment in there. And it's a time warp, and it's really worth a visit. Okay, I don't think I'm going to get anything further than this really fruity, rich caramel slightly caramel overtones, but fruity and floral. for sure. So this is a non-age statement. It's 40% ABV, and it's not pretending to be anything. It's in the sort of whiskey. If this was a wine bottle, they would say that this is the shape of bottle that us women would pick up, because it's broad at the shoulder and slim at the hips, and that apparently is how we like our men. So it's an attractive bottle, the label's nice, it's got that sort of nautical logo, and it's a bit blue and yellow, and yes, very nice and dreamy sort of homes and gardens. But for us whiskey lovers, none of that's relevant. It's what it tastes like. So I can't pretend this is a revelation, because I really do know it well. But it is creamy. And there aren't many whiskies that you say that about. You might say it about beer because of the malt, but and I suppose there's your link. But it is really creamy. Caramel at the bottom, very, very slightly banana notes. I know banana was kind of a thing in whiskey for a short while, and I hope that thing has gone away, because it never really did it for me. But this is it just adds to a very light richness, and it's all first fill American oak, 100%. It's got good legs on it for 40%. You know, nothing spectacular, but it is good legs, and it's rich. And a lot of that fruitiness, which I just have to check out with the second sip, which is much, as always, much more gentle, evenly spread, homogenized, misses the creaminess on the first sip, but then underneath it's all there again and amplified. And it is, well, it's Speyside with an outdoor rugged appearance, I think. That would be how I would sum this up. It's easy drinking for sure. I must try and find my old video about modern Scottish whiskies, because I included this in that collection, and it was a firm favourite. It was just sort of light, bright, stylish, a bit snappy, a dresser, you know, it's just a bit different. But the fruitiness in this is unique, and it actually comes from the Lomond still, wash still that they have, which is the only one in use for Scotch whisky in the whole of the Scottish whisky producers. There is one more. Yes, those of you who know your stuff will know that already. But it's at Bruichladdich, and it's used to create the botanist's gin. The Lomond stills have a thicker neck, and you know, it's the sort of the prop forward of the still world. But the fruitiness of this is completely, as I understand it, and I am a cook, not a whiskey maker. The fruitiness of this is completely attributable to that Lomond still. And quite honestly, dear viewer, if that is the case, why aren't more distilleries using them? They're probably out of, you know, they've probably gone out of business, but it is delightful. Now, I've got to put this down to pick up my water. And I know that I prefer this whiskey without water, but I need to be able to tell you what happens when I add the water. The nose actually is more challenging. Perhaps it's just because I've got some of the whiskey on my top lip. The nose, I think, is more challenging. But by adding water, it brings out much more tannic notes, which is probably the first Phil-American oak coming to the fore. But that in itself, of course, is possibly part of why it's such an absolutely brilliant whisky with food. And, you know, there are many things in the food world that are difficult to pair with, whether your interest is wine or whisky or whatever it is, beer even, because beer matching with food is a very good game to play. But when you have tannic notes, it really does help to balance up and to make the bridge between the drink that you're taking and the food that you're eating. I have paired this whisky very, very successfully with coffee ice cream, which is both difficult to make well because of the inherent bitterness and high roast of coffee, and then the fact that freezing coffee doesn't always do it an awful lot of good. So to have a good coffee ice cream and then find a whisky that will go with that really well is difficult. And let me tell you, this really, really does work well. Yes, for me, it's a real shame that in a short whisky video, I had to add that drop of water so that you would know how this tasted. So on the label, Scapa the Orcadian. Yes, Highland Park, I'm sorry today, but as I say, a lot of Orcadian whisky drinkers, really this is their favourite, and hence they've got that moniker on there. What about the name of it, Scapa Skiren? Well, Skiren is an old Norse word that refers to the long summer days. Okay, beginning of March, we're not quite there yet, but certainly the days are 12 hours long here at the moment. Well, getting on for it. I might be exaggerating slightly. But in the summer, in the long days of summer, we tend to refer to that as the simmer dim. So, you know, it's virtually daylight for 21, 22 hours. It is a strange phenomenon. So, the predominant flavour in here, they say heather on the label. I don't think it's heather, but then I've never had a mouthful of heather. Heather honey, maybe. Honey with attitude and that little bit of sort of edginess to it. But I think for people who don't, here we are, I should be hugging it with the label towards you. For people who think they're not really whisky fans, then the Scapa Skiren is the most fabulous whisky to start them off on. It's not cheap actually. It's certainly not in the sort of the first level cost. And I think I paid just over £40 for this in the co-op. But, you know, wherever you buy your whisky, have a look and see what they've got it for. One or two things over my shoulder. Yes, I'm sorry about the mast, but we're certainly not going to take it down. That belongs to Faroese telecoms, yes, for the Faroe Islands. And that is how we get our internet, because we are way too far away from a British telecom green box at the moment. So there's no chance in this world that we'd be able to upload any videos to YouTube, and what a loss that would be to the world if we didn't have that mast. So I'm enjoying a lunchtime dram of Scapa Skiren here in Orkney, and there is Scapa Flow over my shoulder. And I did say to Mr. Moon, just before we started this, just checking it hasn't gone off, that when the weather's warmer and it's a lovely bright day, we ought to do a little Whisky in Orkney tour for you and actually show you Highland Park and Scapa, where they sit against each other, and just show you a little bit about Orkney's whisky sites. So keep watching and that will happen. In the meantime, it's jolly cold and I think it's time I went indoors. So, see you next time and enjoy your Whisky Wednesday. Bye for now. Come on, Patch, time to go inside.